I've been collecting trains for a long time. Always been a fan of model trains. Started off with HO, then moved into G, and then in the mid 90s, I discovered O scale. My parents brought me my first Lionel train. It was a 1996 model. I think it was a Hudson. And at that time, I just knew as a kid that Lionel was the truth. And that is the brand of trains that I am going to specialize in collecting, right? So now, obviously, I'm a serious collector as an adult, and I try to get as many trains as I can when I can. So when Lionel announced this stunning Berkshire 777 locomotive in this fantasy paint scheme, which looks awesome, I knew it was something I had to have. But then when Lionel announced that there were going to be matching passenger cars, I said, hey, I've got to get the passenger cars, right? So that was announced in the Volume 2 2024 catalog, and they matched the engine perfectly. Now, I noticed on page 44 the Volume 2 catalog, it documents these cars, it has the prices, the features, and one of those features are that it comes equipped with figures. So, imagine the surprise to a lot of folks when, they got these cars, which aren't cheap by any means. For those of us who were able to obtain them, there weren't any figures. So, word over the airways started spreading out, and a lot of people said, hey, if Lionel, if you send these into Lionel, they would install the figures, and it seemed legitimate because that's what, was advertised. So yeah, of course, they would keep their word. So I called Lionel myself and I said, hey, these were supposed to come with figures, and before I even gave them the item number, they wanted to know, well, where did you hear that? Where did that rumor come from? Well, it's not a rumor. It's in the catalog, right? Volume 2, page 44, that advertises these cars says these cars are supposed to come with figures. So it's not a rumor. That's what was advertised. So, the first response I got was kind of defensive. Where did you hear that? Well, I heard it in the catalog that was given, right? So I was told that that was a typo, and it was just a mistake. Pretty much, we should get over it, that it was a mistake. Well, honestly, I personally feel that the right thing to do, regardless if it's a mistake or not, is to honor what was advertised, especially with the price point that a lot of these passenger cars are coming in at. They're not cheap, and in some cases, if you get all the passenger cars, they might cost you more than what the actual engine itself cost, right? So I don't feel like rushing the situation, underneath the rug as a typo is the correct way to do things. I feel like there might have been some options there that could have been explored, whether it's having the customers provide proof of purchase and send in the cars and have Lionel install the figures, or just have the customers email proof of purchase and have the passenger figures sent over to the customer, and we can install them ourselves instead of just being told, oh, it was a typo. Now, I understand mistakes in all industries happen. That's just the law of the land. But quite frankly, there's a reason why the customer is always right is a saying, right? Typically in any other business, the manufacturer tries to honor, they say, hey, we made a mistake. That's our bad, but we will still honor what was advertised. Unfortunately, that was not the case in this situation. I am a little bit disappointed with that. I know a lot of others that are still disappointed. There's even one person I know who sent in their cars to have figures installed, and they got permission from Lionel to send in their cars. So they sent in their cars, they repackaged it, shipped it off to Lionel. Lionel got the passenger cars, and then they were like, no, we're not doing it. We're shipping you your cars back. All right. So that could be rather upsetting, to go through, the purchasing process, getting the money to purchase the passenger cars, and then realizing that they didn't come with the figures as advertised. Now, there are other 21-inch passenger cars that have come out with figures, such as the City of Miami set, where that came with figures. It wasn't even announced, right? In this case, these cars were announced that they were going to be coming with figures in the catalog. It's clear as day. I'm a little disappointed in the way that this situation has been handled, quite frankly. And I personally just couldn't remain silent on this one. Um, do with that as you will. But at this point, I usually try not to say anything, but this time around, I just feel like this is not being handled in the correct way. This has nothing to do with any of the dealers or distributors. This is just straight from Lionel, straight to Lionel. Hopefully you guys see this, and I'm just hoping that a better course of action can be taken other than, us receiving the product and then just being told essentially to deal with it when we call customer service. We deserve a better response than that, especially for those of us who, aggressively support the hobby, and those of us who are trying to get into the hobby, and some of those who are in the hobby and are trying to navigate to collect some of the higher end merchandise, right? So just a little disappointed. Do with that information what you will. That's just my thoughts on that.